This is exactly how they work.
This is the latest front in the DEA's war on drugs, a high-speed pill press machine.
This one is very fast.
6,000 fentanyl pills in 1 hour.
Correct.
Hundreds of machines like it were seized by federal law enforcement last year. In a duplex-turned-drug lab, DEA says agents discovered these presses in New York City last October and also seized 200,000 suspected fentanyl pills.
In the last 6 months, we've seized pill presses in New York, in Massachusetts, in Mississippi, in Kentucky.
That includes pill presses purchased online, according to DEA Administrator Anne Milgram. Last month, eBay agreed to pay the Department of Justice $59 million after the e-commerce site allegedly fell short of identifying and reporting pill press purchases required under federal law.
Who is buying these pill presses online?
Drug traffickers across the United States who are buying the pill presses. They have fentanyl, and they're using that fentanyl to make them into these fake pills.
Last year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection say they seized more than 5,700 pill presses or parts associated, including dyes and punches.
DEA has found that roughly 7 out of 10 fentanyl pills tested at labs like this one contain a potentially lethal dose of the drug. Some of it is pressed into pills and into the United States, where it's sold in the streets and online. Recently, we've seen a shakeup in how law enforcement has approached that supply chain from the middle to the outer edges. That looks like more interaction with Chinese diplomats on the subject of precursors. It also looks like cracking down on some of these operations we've seen emerge in basements, in hotels across the country, of gangs tied to the Mexican cartel pressing pills here in the U.S.
So when we're talking about pressing pills, we're literally talking about basically two things that come together, smash and create a pill. Is the idea just to create a pill, sell it on the street, or to create a pill that looks like what you might get at, the pharmacy?
That is exactly the point, John. It is a counterfeit pill that looks much like oxycodone. In fact, I think we have images we can bring up of some of these counterfeit pills that DEA has put out. You can see on the right there, that's the real pill. And on the left, that is the counterfeit pill. And DEA says that 7 out of 10 of the pills they have seized in the past year have contained a potentially lethal dose of the drug fentanyl. And, something we can get at is that you might be surprised to learn more and more of these pill presses are being purchased online.
What? Just go pillpress.com or where online? And what else? For what other reason would a person have a pill press if you weren't a drug company?
It's a great question. And these are becoming more and more popular on e-commerce sites. So popular, in fact, that the Department of Justice reason. And in a first of its kind settlement, we saw eBay agree to pay the Department of Justice $59 million. And then the DEA turned around and it sent a letter to hundreds of other e-commerce sites. And it says, if you don't comply with federal law, we're going to do the same for you. And so, where do these pill presses end up? As I mentioned earlier, because fentanyl doesn't have a growing season, they can be put in more clandestine locations. So we've seen them in basements, in hotels, in residential buildings. I think we have an image here where you can see images of 2 pill presses seized by HSI and DEA in a Bronx neighborhood about 10 miles north of here.
Wow. Let me ask you quickly at the end here, Nicole, there were numbers, preliminary numbers, I think, and there we see the pill presses that were seized from the CDC that said there was a slight drop in fentanyl overdoses. Why?
Yeah, great question. For the first time in 5 years, overdose deaths decreased, a 3.7% drop in opioid overdoses. That's a big deal. And a lot of policymakers, lawmakers, and experts say it's in part due to the harm reduction model. What is that? It's really just meeting people with substance use disorder where they're at, increasing access to treatment. And one big success we've seen in the harm reduction model in the past year is access to Narcan, or naloxone, as the generic name is called. That's a medication, usually a nasal spray, that can reverse opioid overdose. And we've seen more in schools, in businesses. In fall of 2023, it became available at supermarkets and at pharmacies. In fact, a continued expansion. Last week, Walgreens said it's going to make its own generic version of naloxone. You'll be able to pick it up in stores for $35. So a lot of success there. We should point out this is both a supply and a demand problem. And so